Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Paul and Daisy Soros Fellowships for New Americans information session for folks who are thinking about business school or who are involved in entrepreneurship and applying to graduate school and thinking about the fellowship. I'm Nika Landau. I'm the Director of Communications. I'm joined by my colleague, Yamilet Lopez, and we're really excited to have Connie Liu here, and we might have another fellow as well. So we're going to focus today on applicants who, again, are really focused on business and entrepreneurship, and to basically talk through how to set up your application with that in mind. So we're going to go over the basics. We are not going to be going over eligibility today. So I highly encourage you to head to our website and check out the eligibility page there. There's also a short webinar and a little quiz you can take if you have eligibility questions. Today, I really want to make the most of our panelists' time so that they can share, their perspective on applying to the fellowship and what makes a compelling application, specifically coming from sort of this business background. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A or the chat. And we are recording this, so we'll put the recording up once it's ready. We have a YouTube channel, so you'll be able to find it there. And but yes, please feel free to ask questions and we'll get to them at the end. And for those who are attending live, we'd love to, if you can just drop in the chat, like where in the country or in the world you are, and sort of where you are in school. Are you in college or have you graduated? And maybe what your focus or area of interest is. We'd love to just hear so we can answer your questions better. But without further ado, I'd love to interview our panelist, or have our panelists say hello. Connie, do you want to kick us off and just share a little bit about what you're working on when you got the fellowship, and maybe just a little bit of what the fellowship has meant to you?
Yeah, totally. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name's Connie. I'm calling in from Palo Alto, California. That's also where Stanford is located, where I went to business school, sponsored by the Paul and Daisy Soros Fellowship. And then I also did a dual degree with a master's of public administration at Harvard Kennedy School that I added on after. So it's kind of like a convoluted, like Frankenstein together grad program for me. I was a fellow in the class of 2020, and I to give a little of an idea of like my path, I studied engineering in college. I went to MIT, studied mechanical engineering, then pivoted into becoming a high school teacher. So really went into education, felt a lot of passion for that, and started an education nonprofit prior to applying for business school and the Paul and Daisy Soros Fellowship. And now, post business school, I run a coaching company and am an executive coach who mostly works with startups to provide coaching to employees. And the Paul and Daisy Soros Fellowship was what made grad school possible for me. A lot of you probably know, as folks applying to MBAs, it can be very expensive, and oftentimes a lot of people are sponsored by their company if they're coming from consulting, which means that if you're taking an entrepreneurship path, you're probably paying a lot out of pocket. I am incredibly grateful for being able to even go to grad school because of the fellowship, and also meet a really incredible community that I'm still very much in touch with in both my fellow class and a lot of the other fellow classes as well.
Great, thank you so much. I don't know if our other fellow is on yet, so
I'm on, sorry. I'm
oh,
on my phone as always. Um,
welcome. Do you want to just say hi and share a little bit about what you're working on and when you got the fellowship?
Happy to. Hi, everybody. My name is Keerthana. I'm an MBA MPP at University of Chicago. Actually, ton of overlap between me and Connie, which I knew, but it's funny to hear it right now and realize. I also used to be a teacher. So my initial path was I was an early childhood special ed teacher, My thinking then was I wanted to be a service provider and I wanted to get an MD PhD. But then you kind of enter the public government system and you realize how broken everything is. So I really transitioned into this mode of how are we solving things at a systemic level so that we don't have to, we're using our resources as efficiently and efficaciously as possible. So, like Connie, I wanted to do the dual degree. U Chicago is the best fit for me because I'm from here, my family's here. Um, and I don't have Connie's patience to go coast to coast, I guess, is my ultimate decision. But yeah, Soros was a wild shot. I did not expect to get it. I think everyone who got it says the same thing. It's been an incredible horizon broadening opportunity on so many dimensions. And even like the scholarship aside, I found the application process really enlightening on a personal level. So at the very least, you will get that. But yeah, happy to answer questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that we have these two fellows on, and I'll go through a few basics, but I'm going to bring them in to sort of talk through the application. And I see that we have a lot of different people in the chat coming from different backgrounds. And we do have other sessions that are already up that are focused on other disciplines. So like if you are going to medical school, you might want to do the STEM session, for example. But if you have this entrepreneurial or business school minded application, then, that's great. And this will definitely be a good fit for you or a good addition to other things that you're watching. But we're so glad to have the fellows on who can really share the best information and sort of approach on applying. So just I will say, as they said, as Keerthana and Connie said, they have similar backgrounds in that there's the connection to education. But you can jump onto our website to see more fellows from other backgrounds and focus areas. And I highly encourage you to just throw anything that you're interested in the search bar as well. There's so many different fellows working on so many different things. Ultimately, this fellowship is about contribution and giving back. And so fellows are thinking about really big issues, really big problems, really big challenges or opportunities. And so a lot of the time it's going to be in focus areas that are really important and interesting. And so whether if you're interested in sustainability from a business approach, you might also find fellows who are working on that from an architectural standpoint or from an engineering standpoint or from a policy standpoint. So it's just a really neat group of people. And I hope it will inspire you even if you decide not to apply, although I hope everyone does apply. So just to ground us in who we're looking for, I wanted to just share our selection criteria. This is what our readers are thinking about when they go over your applications. And ultimately, as I said, this is about making a contribution. So the readers are really looking for folks who have some sort of spark, desire to give back, a passion, a huge interest, a huge skill set, and are not looking to do things exactly as they've been done in their field. So if you're looking to get an MBA and then go and kind of have a very traditional career path, that is awesome, but that probably won't be a good fit for the fellowship, right? So the fellowship will be a good fit for somebody who is thinking about how they can scale some sort of change, solve something, use their varying skill sets to broaden opportunity, whatever it is that's driving you. That's what the fellowship is probably going to be really excited about. So we're looking for creativity, originality, or initiative in your field, but also in the work you do in other parts of your life. And we're not looking for creativity in that you are an artist or a musician, although we do have artists and musicians in the fellowship. We're looking for a creative approach to your work, whatever that might be, or a creative approach to the things you work on. And again, initiative could be something totally outside of your field of study. Maybe you saw something on your campus that needed fixing and you took the initiative to fix it, or to start something to try to fix it. We're looking for sustained accomplishment. So that just means we're looking for folks who are showing up for the things that they care about, that are working towards something. And maybe you're pivoting, maybe you're doing something totally new with your MBA, but we are still going to see that kind of sustained accomplishment in other parts of your resume or your work. Maybe you were on the track team for 4 years, or maybe you stuck with a job that was really difficult. We want to see that sustained effort towards something. And that really ties into the promise of future significant contributions, that desire to achieve something and to give back through your work. We do want to know that your planned graduate training is relevant for your future goals. So if you're telling us that you want to be let's say like a dentist, we're going to wonder why you're getting an MBA. But if you tell us you want to go into policy, or you want to be a business leader or an entrepreneur, those things will obviously make sense. But definitely stress test whatever the reason that you're getting the degree that you want with a few people to make sure it's really obvious to them, because there can be other types of graduate degrees that might be a good fit. And since we do meet a lot of students, we want to know you're kind of picking the path that makes the most sense for your goals. And finally, the commitment to the Constitution and Bill of Rights. And Connie and Keerthana, I'd love to hear your take on this. This is one of our selection criteria. We were founded by Paul and Daisy Soros, who are both immigrants from Hungary. Paul lived under Nazism and communism. And so when he got to the US, it was just amazing to be able to study whatever he wanted to study, regardless of his last name or his religion. And that became a core part of the fellowship, especially since we're a fellowship for new Americans. But that said, we don't really ask our applicants to touch on this. So most applicants don't mention the Constitution and Bill of Rights. Our readers really do a generous read and look for how applicants are thinking about their larger communities, how they're thinking about being citizens of their communities, good citizens of their communities, how they're opening the door a little bit wider for the people that are coming behind them. Connie, did you think about this particular criteria at all?
I had a little freak out moment right before I clicked apply of like, oh my gosh, I didn't mention the Constitution. And then I went and read the Constitution. I was like, this is silly. I don't know how to integrate this. And so I'll just say, like, not very explicitly. I will say probably the like allusion to it was a lot of my education work is in granting equal opportunity and freedoms to anyone to be able to pursue STEM. So a lot of it was kind of embedded in the way you're talking about. And I think the only thing that one recommender was kind enough to notice when he was looking through the criteria, he was like, hey, I noticed that like Constitution and Bill of Rights, do you want me to mention any like more like citizenship freedom words? And then he incorporated a little bit into his letter of rec in how he like talked about the values I brought, but none of it needs to be as explicit as doesn't feel natural.
Great. Keerthana, what about you?
Yeah, I think unless you are a civil rights lawyer, it's never going to sound as direct. For me, what I was really interested in was how are we building more accessible and equitable government social infrastructure? And my interpretation is that that's inherently about the Constitution and what this country is about, which is equal opportunity, right? To live your best life, to live a fulfilling life, to take care of your children, to take care of your families. And so that was the interpretation I took. I never said the Bill of Rights or Constitution. I'm like Connie, I didn't read it either. I just was like, whatever I remember from seventh grade, that's got to be right. Um, and so that was more the angle I took. I think I benefited from the fact that my entire career was public service, and public service was also going to be my post-grad goal. So it felt a bit more natural for me.
Yeah, I think, just anything that you are working on, right, is going to have some bigger connections and ties if it is at all about other people, about giving back, about improving the lives of the people around you or in the world. So don't overthink this, and definitely no need to read the Constitution and Bill of Rights, although if that's a good read always. So if you do want to do that, great, but you really don't need to be an expert in these things at all. And there's so many different connections that we can make. So I wouldn't worry about them so much. And a little bit just about our selection process, because it is important to know we are merit-based and we don't have any quotas. We have a holistic review process. We pick up your entire application every time we pick it up. We don't have like as it says, there's no GPA or test score requirements or cutoffs. So we're not just ever looking at one thing in the application and not the rest. We're picking up the whole application. We have a concept called the distance traveled, though, and this really helps us with merit, since we are looking at applicants from such vastly different backgrounds and in such vastly different fields. We'll have a lot of applicants who might be in business or policy, but we also have applicants in STEM and arts and music. And so merit just looks entirely different for everybody. And because we're working with new Americans, some of our applicants have just recently come to the country, and English is, maybe their third or fourth language. Whereas for some of our applicants, they grew up here and English is their first language, and their parents have PhDs, and so education was much more integrated into their life growing up. So there's just a huge range of people applying, and we are excited about everyone. But we use this idea of distance traveled to think about essentially where somebody is coming from and what merit looks like for them. We do think of merit both on your application, like in the traditional way that somebody might read your resume and look for merit, i.e. like GPA or the classes you've taken or the ways you've challenged yourselves in extracurriculars. But we also look for other pieces of merit. For perhaps you're the first in your family to graduate from high school or to go to college or to pursue graduate school. Perhaps you had a job to support yourself or your family during high school or college. Maybe you took care of a loved one or helped raise a little sibling. These are things that we think of as having real value, and you might not include them in another application, but you should definitely consider talking about them in our application. So we really are looking at your academic and professional work, but I want to stress that we're also looking at your new American story, and we really want to get to know the full you through your application so we can understand the opportunities and obstacles that you have faced, so we know what your achievements are. We can talk more about this, but part of our application, I think that is challenging, is that you have to understand what your achievements are and be able to frame those. So, for somebody who's graduating from high school and they're the first in their family to do so, you might think, well, everybody who's applying to PD Soros has a high school degree. So you might not think of it as an achievement within the context of this application. But for you, if that is an achievement because you were the first in your family to do that, then you should share that. But we won't know what your achievements are unless you tell us what your achievements are. So there is some reflection that does need to go into that process. We are a nonpartisan 501c3. We don't have any policy agenda as an organization. We're not looking for a specific policy agenda from our applicants. And all of our applications are reviewed after our application deadline. And something a lot of people don't know is that you can apply more than once, and many of our fellows have in fact applied more than once. So if you're applying to business school, then you could apply when you're applying to business school. So you don't need to know where you're going to business school or any school when you apply to our fellowship. You can apply to our program simultaneously. And then you can also apply in your first year if you're in a 2-year program. So just a little bit there on when you can apply. Okay, so I will bring our panelists in for this application conversation. The application has some background questions that everybody fills out about their New American background, their educational background, and then we ask for a resume or CV, college and graduate school unofficial transcripts, graduate school entrance scores. So this would be an unofficial copy of a GRE or an MBA or whatever, or sorry, an MBA, GRE or an, what is the other? I'm blanking. What is the MBA?
Yeah.
The GMAT, thank you. The GMAT or whatever required standardized test is necessary. But if a test is not necessary, you don't need to submit one, or sorry, if it wasn't required, you don't need to submit a score. And if you haven't taken it yet, then you can also note that. And then we have 2 essays, optional exhibits, and recommendations. So I want to go a little bit in reverse order just so we have enough time to talk about everything and start with recommendations. So we do require 3 to 5 recommendations, and they can really be from anybody. So you have to do some strategizing as to who you're going to ask for your recommendations. I would say that if you're, let's say, a senior in college or 1 year out of college, a lot of recommendations tend to be from folks connected to your college experience. But the farther you get out from college, the fewer probably college recommendations you'll have. Especially as somebody, if you're in sort of the business or policy space, a lot of the times it can be great to have a colleague or a manager who can speak to your interest in getting an MBA or whatever degree that you're getting. So Keerthana, who did you have as your recommenders?
Yeah, it was a minute for me since college. So, and I had already started my dual degree when I applied. So I had my 2 prior supervisors um, write the letters, and then I had a current professor who was leading like a program I was in the business school, write it as like a forward-looking letter. So there was still an academic component, but it was just in the opposite direction.
Great. Connie, what about you?
I loved the recommender process for the Soros Fellowship because they're so generous with how many you're allowed to do that I took it as a chance to show off different sides of me. So I ended up getting 1 college professor, 2 prior bosses, one from my engineering world to like kind of showcase like I can get things done, and the other one was my boss when I was a teacher, so he could give that like relational and passion side of me. And then finally, I had a parent of a student write one of them, and that was I'm not a reviewer, but I know that the panelists like talked about that letter the most. And I think it was the only time that I felt bold enough to do such a non-standard recommendation letter, just because there was so much allowance for up to 5 that I really did want to show that side of myself of like how I relate to kids and how they are able to see that passion too. And that was really shown through the parent letter.
I love that, Connie. Yeah, some great examples here of just folks that you've worked with, professors, and then yes, you can have sort of a more unconventional letter or more than one letter. So I think in general you are looking for folks who know you really well, who can speak to your impact or your potential impact, who can speak to your story or sort of where you're coming from, who can lend credibility to your application, and who can share in to the committee your story to tell them, hey, you just read this person's application and they really are absolutely amazing. You should definitely interview this person. This is not a recommendation where somebody's sort of just like writing a standard form and saying, hi, I know Connie. She was in my class. She received an A. That's it. Like this is a really, somebody who's really on your team and you can trust writing you a strong recommendation. So think about those people who really believe in you and have seen you, and maybe again, like thinking strategically about people who can speak to different aspects of your life or your work, as Connie and Keerthana said. I think that's a great strategy. Um, and we can certainly answer any more questions on that. So next we'll go up again to the optional exhibits. And the optional exhibits are really a great place to round out your application. So you'll have included your resume and your CV, and your essays will tell your story, and your transcripts will have your grades, and your background questions will answer a lot of demographic questions. But the optional exhibits are a place that kind of round out the application, and this can be a place where you can upload anything that you feel like, hey, I want to add examples of my work. I want to add a news story that somebody wrote about me, or I want to add, I have this hobby that I'm really passionate about, but I didn't get to share anything. So let me share a part of that hobby. We always say the optional exhibits for our applicants in the arts or design is the optional exhibits are sort of essential because, if you're a music composer, we want to then hear the music that you've composed. So it's a great chance to do that. But for all of our other applicants, I would say it truly is an optional section. A lot of our fellows do not submit anything for this, so do not feel that you need to. And it is optional for our readers. So if you submit, let's say, an example of writing that you've done, they might read it, they might not read it. Or if you submit a novel, they might read one page, but they certainly do not have to read the whole thing. So just, you want to be really well organized in what you present, and you want to probably add a sentence or two about before anything, just explaining what it is and why you're sharing it, although it should not be another essay. So Connie, do you remember what you put into the optional exhibits?
Yeah, I believe I submitted 2 pages. One of them was like a page of links to articles written about the nonprofit I had started. And then one of them was a link to links to awards that I've won. I'm gonna guess none of the links were clicked on. They were mostly saying a lot of what I'd said in my essay already about the work I've done. It was just like proof that other people recognize the work as well.
Cool. That's great. Keerthana, what about you?
I was during the pandemic, I was helping run DC public school system, so there was a lot I couldn't share about the intricacies of that, but thankfully we also had a lot of public facing materials for families and students. So I linked those archived sites in case, they just wanted a sense of what it actually meant and what the work actually looked like. And I'm also a photographer, so I included some photos just to kind of show that that's one way in which I kind of look at the world and my life.
Love that. That's great. Yeah. So they again, for other people that there might be yeah, more even like for our applicants in STEM, they might be sharing research that they've done, even if it's unpublished. They might say like, or they might say like they've submitted something, or here's a peer-reviewed article they've done. So you're giving just some specific information about whatever you're sharing and why you're sharing it, and it's lending credibility to your application in some way, and that it's sharing something new about you and helping the readers get a full picture of you. The readers are from different backgrounds. Some of them are going to be experts in your work, and some of them are not going to be experts in your work. So the optional exhibits are also a nice way to let the application be a bit of an accordion, in that maybe your essays are really geared towards everybody who's reading it, but the optional exhibits, if somebody was really interested in diving into something more detailed, they could go there. So they can serve a lot of different purposes. Okay, now let's go to the heart of the application, which are the two essays. We have the first essay that we require is the New American essay. That's what we call it. And this essay is a personal essay that can be up to 1,000 words, that is asking our applicants, what does it mean to them to be a new American, and to share some of their experiences as a new American. So, Keerthana, I'd love to hear you talk about your experience writing this essay. What was the process like for you?
I will start off by saying you've never written an essay like this and you never will again. And take that to your advantage. I finished off everything earlier because I had the benefit of I was already done applying to grad school. So a lot of those kind of mainstay materials could be repurposed. But I knew this one would need attention. Um, I think also think about your writing style. I'm the kind of person where I will write something and then I'll just start a new document and start writing it again from scratch. And by going through that process over and over again, which is painful, but it's how I write. It's kind of how I get to what I actually think is worth saying. And so give yourself time for that. Understand your writing process. Talk to your family, friends, or loved ones. Don't give your essay to too many people for feedback. That's different than talking to them before you start writing it. It gets a lot murkier when you start inviting too many cooks in the kitchen, especially with something kind of as personal and delicate as this essay. And for me, it actually was a very clarifying process. Like I was taken aback. I'm a pretty self-aware, reflective person, but I was taken aback by how at the end of this, I had stitched together all these parts of my life and my childhood in a way I'd not fully processed until I did this. And that's why I was saying, even on a personal level, if you approach it sincerely, it's going to be good for you. Just going through the application process and writing this essay in particular.
Connie, what about you?
Yeah, 100%. I feel like before I wrote my New American essay, I was like, my attitude truly was like, I'm just another Asian who's good at math. And I think like sitting down and having to process what it meant for my parents to immigrate here when they are very much the type to erase that part of themselves. They're like, uh, very like, we are in America now, we're gonna work hard, we're gonna like have a secure future. And then that's all that exists. And then it like prompted conversations that I'd never had with them about what that immigration process looked like for them and how it integrated into my own story. And I think I saw it as like, I was born here, so I exist as an American. I just look Chinese, to this like beautiful merging of like all these motivations that led them to immigrate to the US from China are also the ones that are embedded in me of wanting to make big changes and be an entrepreneur and create a different future than existed before. And it was this very beautiful integration process for me.
Love that. Thank you both so much. Yes, so the New American Essay, regardless of what type of applicant you are, it is really critical and it's a personal essay. So there's just no way around it. It takes some reflection. And for most of our applicants, if they have the opportunity to have conversations with their parents about immigrating, or loved ones, it just can be really helpful, and typically a lot is learned. So it's a great opportunity, and we hope you enjoy writing this essay. We also know it can be troubling and hard, and that immigration also is very traumatic, and so we certainly don't take that lightly. But that's why it's good to start early, to just sort of think through what you do want to share and what you don't want to share, and what are the strands that do make sense, because you only have 1,000 words, so not everything is going to end up in the final essay, but it will be helpful to take that time to curate what you come up with. I think this first essay is our opportunity as a fellowship to get to know you and to understand the things that kind of make you tick, like a little bit of your DNA as a person. Like, what are like Connie is passionate about this, and it kind of all makes sense once I've read this essay. And so we really want to get to know you as a person. And in some cases, this essay will touch on why, in fact, you are passionate about whatever you're pursuing for graduate school. So there might be some sharing that is a little bit about your journey or your academic or professional journey, but in some cases that won't really come up. It's totally different for everybody. We don't provide templates for this just because we really do see so much creativity, and we don't want you to feel limited to a certain way that someone has done it. But in general, this is a kind of almost like a personal essay for a entrance into a college. That can be the template if you want. It's really up to you how you want to do it, though. And then moving to the second essay is a much more typical graduate school entrance essay, in that this essay is asking, why would you like to go to graduate school? What would you like to pursue in graduate school? And what are your near and long-term goals? What are you trying to achieve? So this is much more about looking forward, and us getting to know you as a graduate school student, as a professional, as somebody who wants to make a contribution. I think it's on you here to share a little bit more about your academic and professional life and what you're really excited about. And again, maybe you've already introed that in the New American Essay. But this is where we're really going to understand more of the nuts and bolts of your plans and what you're thinking. And I want to say, for applicants pursuing MBAs and other similar degrees, this can be a real challenge. So I'd love to hear from Connie and Keerthana about how they talked about what their goals are, just because there is so much that you can do with these degrees. And obviously the point of going to graduate school is to learn and ask questions, and to change course, and to be open to opportunity. So we don't want people to have it too fine of a plan going into their programs. So Connie, how did you approach this second essay?
I feel like the second essay felt more approachable because it felt more similar to what I had written for grad school, of like, why am I going to grad school? And a lot of my path up until then had been this deep passion for education. How do we change the education system to be more focused on students owning their own learning and being passionate about what they're building and doing and learning through project-based learning? So like the story of the ultimate mission was very aligned with the work I'd done of like teaching and starting this nonprofit. And then the part grad school was to play was, how do I scale in like the policy way and the business way and learn all the levers I have to be able to continue to make that education impact. Then after I graduated, I am now in workplace learning. So it's like, I feel like the vision is still what you write about, knowing that like sometimes life happens and you go to grad school and you discover a new field that you're passionate about, but like write whatever is true to you. And like no one from the Paul and Daisy Soros world has been like, why didn't you stick to your essay? They're just like, we believe in you as a passionate human being, like go where your passion carries you, but like have a North Star at all times. And it's okay if that like shifts a bit over time.
Absolutely. No one is going to follow you around with these essays, but you do have to have a vision that we can get excited about. And in good writing, you're helping the reader understand who you are so that they can put down your application and think, oh, this is that applicant who's going to get their MBA and is really passionate about sustainability. And oh, they did this really cool engineering degree, so I bet they're going to be able to bring that with them. Like just if you want them to have some understanding of what you're excited about, right? So that it's easy to remember you and understand you. At the same time, like, yeah, it's okay to change and to change course. You don't have to write this manifesto and never never veer away from it. So think about what is true for, as Connie said, for you when you are writing this, and that is okay. There's no need to be intimidated or to feel like, well, yeah. And I always say also, like, imagine if everything conspires for you. Imagine everything is working in your direction. Like, we don't need to hear about all the limitations and boundaries that you you imagine for yourself. Think of the things that you would want to do if you could do anything. Like, if everything works out, what do you want to do? Keerthana, how did you approach the second essay?
I think they really want to understand how you think more than what exactly you're committing to. And if you're being honest, even if for me it was very murky because I was coming from a completely different mindset and I was trying to understand how do we actually think about social infrastructure from the constituent lens rather than from the lens of like, city administrators or government leaders. And that's not really a sector. That's not really a job. That's just a lot of questions and promise from me that I'm going to really think about that over the course of these 3 years. And they were receptive to that because it made sense considering my background, my experiences, and how I presented myself and how I wanted to use these 2 degrees moving forward. So feel free to be as radically honest as possible, even if that means you're sharing the type of questions you're thinking about more than answers that you definitively can commit to. And make sure you are weaving a narrative across your experiences, even if that includes like a massive pivot like mine did, right? Like there has to be a reason for that. And what is that reason? And they're really receptive to all types of thinking. This is not like grad school applications. This is a very different beast. And your best bet is to be as honest as possible.
Great. Yeah, these are great thinking and great things to share. I think one thing that does come up in the second essay is also a little bit, we are interested in where you're going to graduate school or where you're hoping to go to graduate school. So if you've already been admitted, it can be helpful to just at least have a sentence about why you chose the program that you're in. If you're applying to several programs and don't know where you'll be going yet, it's nice to know why you, generally speaking, have chosen that group of programs. So, especially if you're applying, let's say, in a certain geographic area, like why is it that you're only applying in that area? Or if you only want to go to programs that have the best XYZ mentorship. We know a lot about a lot of graduate programs, but we also don't know a lot about a lot of graduate programs. So you might assume that we know something that we don't know. So, feel free to share. But also, you don't necessarily want to take up your entire application talking about different graduate programs. So I wouldn't go too into detail, but some sense of that. We want to know that you're challenging yourself within the context of your life and what makes sense for you. Okay, so last thing on this page are the resume and the CV, and then we'll get to questions. So if folks want to put questions in the Q&A, that would be great. Keerthana, did you submit a resume? And if so, how long was it?
Yeah, so the MBA default is one-page resumes. So I just used that. Um, and it worked for me because I'm not coming from an academic background where you do need that extra space for, speaking and writing and so on. So yeah, that's what I did.
Great. Connie, what about you?
Yep, one pager for me too.
Great. So some of our applicants will submit CVs, some will submit longer resumes. I think a one-page resume is awesome. And, what's so nice about it is it's really succinct. And so you can kind of count on the reader actually reading everything on a one-page resume, so long as it's nice and scannable and well formatted. I do also think that it's a great way to just have a little exercise with yourself on thinking like, okay, the reader's going to pick up my application and put it down. What are the things that they're going to be thinking about me? And if it's that you're an engineer educator that has incredible leadership capabilities, maybe those will be headlines on your resume, like engineering experience, education experience, leadership experience, whatever, just be thoughtful about how you're sort of conveying your background to the readers, and the resume can be a great place to do that. I don't see any questions yet, but I'm sure they will come soon. These are some of the things that I think really make a strong application. And again, that's the self-reflective New American story that's in your first essay, your New American essay, a clear articulation of your future goals, and read some of the fellows' bios and see what their goals are. Like, use that as a way to brainstorm what yours might be if you're having a hard time looking to the future. And remember, imposter syndrome might be might not be something that you talk a lot about, but if you're if something feels too big, just remember, like, we do have to get excited about what you're doing. You have to believe in what you're doing. They'll ultimately, if you interview, there'll be other people who are interviewing who are trying to cure cancer. So if you don't believe what you're doing is important, then it's going to be really hard to get this fellowship. So you need to believe in what you're doing and the problems that you're thinking about, or the direction that you're taking. And I'll let you all read the other points on the slide. We do have our first question, and that is, if we are trying to fully pivot into an entrepreneurial endeavor, but our professional experience before the MBA is not really related, do you recommend doing something differently, change the resume somehow, or write additional information? Connie, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say that if you're trying to start something, I'm guessing you have a pretty compelling story for why. And even as an entrepreneur, you're going to be telling that personal story all the time of like, why am I the one starting this exactly? That means like if you're in consulting right now or finance and it's not related to whatever you're starting, like your essay doesn't need to be about that. It can be about everything else in your life that is informed why you are the one starting this. So I don't know if you're like, I don't think you're changing your resume. Like that's just fact where you worked. But I would change, like, don't focus on that stuff if it's not actually part of the story of why you're starting this new company.
Keerthana, do you have any advice on that?
I'm not in the entrepreneurship world as much as Connie is, but I will say it was really weird to apply to an MBA with a fully government only background. And the way I thought about it was forget the titles, forget, you know, the way in which people would traditionally think about what this role means. What was my actual day-to-day like? And how does that track towards like the types of things I was interested in post MBA? So in your case, even if you were XYZ organization, how does the work that you were doing relate to an entrepreneurial capacity or an endeavor? And I think making that argument that, this was my experience and these are the reasons why I think this is suited for me in your essays can be a really strong direction to take.
Yeah, and I would say like you don't really need proof that you will be like an excellent entrepreneur. I think it's like as Connie was saying, like it's like why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you excited to do that thing? Why are you getting the MBA so you can do that thing? Paul Soros, our founder, was an entrepreneur. He was an engineer and started his own company. And a lot of our board members come sort of from that background. So I think, it's much more interesting and exciting for us to understand, why you're the person to do this thing really well. And again, you might be thinking about one thing, but like one company or one specific idea, but in your lifetime, you will work on many ideas. So you might even zoom out beyond that, just because, that you have a whole career ahead of you. Um, Somebody asked, I'm very new to PD Soros. Are these full scholarships or a partial fellowship? So I won't spend too much time on this since you can read a bit more online, and we do have, other info sessions that kind of go into greater depth. But in general, these are $90,000 scholarships for each fellow that go over 2 years. It does vary person by person, based on a whole bunch of factors. But we do our best to get you the full $90,000. But say, for example, you apply during your first year of a two-year program, we would fund the second year of the program, and because the fellowship would start your second year if you applied in your first year, and we would also fund typically the spring semester of your first year because we would provide some retroactive funding. But so you wouldn't see the full $90,000 because that would just be for the year and a half. But if you applied before you started your MBA, like as you're applying, you would likely get the full fellowship. It just depends. So, I would say apply and realize that there are also a lot of benefits beyond the financial piece, although that is obviously a huge and wonderful and important piece. Okay.
Numbers wise,
Yeah.
so Stanford still gave me need-based scholarship on top of the Paul and Daisy Soros Fellowship. And then I think I ended up paying out of pocket each year, maybe like 8,000 and then 5,000 for housing.
Great. Super helpful. And somebody asked, would PD Soros cover tuition for two separate programs within the 2 years? And I think I'd have to understand a little bit more about what you mean. But for example, Keerthana is doing two programs, an MBA and an MPP. And so like we would fund, depending on whatever she's doing full time that first year, and then the second year, that's what we would fund. You do have to tell us what you're applying for. So obviously you'd have to kind of get approval in advance. Somebody else asked, how many readers per application? And I can't share that with you partially because I don't know. I'm not a reader. We have other readers. But it really depends on how far along you get in the process. But if you're interviewing for us, that will mean that several people have read your application. And then if we didn't talk about the interviews, but if you do interview, we do group interviews. So I would say at least another 8 people are reading it at that stage. And then somebody asked if if we accept applicants going to school online. And yes, we did after COVID, we did shift. So folks who are applying to online programs are eligible just because so many programs are online, but you do need to be going to school full time to be eligible. I got that question twice. Okay, somebody said, is the funding towards tuition only, or could we use it to go towards off-campus housing, club costs, etc.? So I think Connie kind of just answered that to some degree, but basically the funding, part of the funding goes to your tuition directly, and that would go to your university to subsidize your tuition. And then part of the funding goes to you directly as a stipend. So it's a check that's sent to you, and you can use that for whatever you would like. So you could use that for off-campus housing, club costs, books. It is really up to you how you would like to use it. So again, part of the funds go directly to your university to offset your tuition costs, and part of that goes to you, and you can choose what you would like to use your funds for. Okay, we have 4 minutes left, so I'd just like to ask Connie and Keerthana for their best advice for applicants who are pursuing an MBA or business school in some capacity. What would you like to kind of make sure applicants do as they're applying?
My main thing is just apply. I felt very insecure about whether I had a good enough story for the fellowship. And I'm very glad that I both went through the process to get that experience of writing the essay. And I was surprised when I got interviewed and then got it. So, like, even if you're on this side of the application and you're like, oh, I don't know if I have a good enough profile, like, it doesn't hurt. Just throw your application in and let them decide, not yourself.
100% seconding that. And I think the best thing you can do, just because of the odds of this, it's actually freedom to be as honest as you want to be, right? Like, you can actually tell exactly what you're going to do or exactly what you're thinking about and see what happens. I've never been as honest in anything as I have in this application. And it was quite liberating because I knew that the folks evaluating wanted to really understand where I was coming from. And it's not like grad school applications where, to some degree, there's a bit of like gaming the process. There, you will not find like similarities across like the 30 people every year who get it, because the similarity is they are each very, very singular and their own specific person. And so don't try to be what you think the evaluators want. Just truly be yourself. I know that's corny. I know that's annoying to hear, but it really is the truth and it'll help you.
Excellent. Well, thank you both so much for sharing your experiences, and I really do hope everyone applies. I do think it can be extremely intimidating to consider applying, but if you put your energy into this application, it will benefit you in a lot of different areas. So I really think it is a worthwhile endeavor, and I hope that the fellows themselves inspire you to think big and to continue to pursue your biggest dreams. And we're really excited that you're interested in the fellowship and that you're going to graduate school. This fellowship is all about celebrating the incredible accomplishments and contributions that immigrants and children of immigrants bring and make to the United States. And I think it's important that all of us don't lose sight of that, and we celebrate that. And it was so wonderful to see you all in the chat and exchanging LinkedIn's and information. That's what we're all about. So thank you. And Connie and Keerthana, thank you again for joining. Yamilet, thanks for running this. Have a great day, everyone, and we will put this recording up soon.
Good luck, everybody. Thank you.